Okay, I'm sort of back here. Let me make sure I get all this in screen here. Okay, so very quickly, a little super fast tutorial on how to do 1-point perspective according to what we need for this project. I'll be going over 1-point perspective in a little bit more detail and showing you some more, let's say, sophisticated things that you can do with it. But for the project at hand, we're going to just learn it very simply, very basically, this way. So what you start out with is a horizon line. And you put a line. We happen to have used it on the project sheet. It's 2 inches down from the top. So you put your horizon line. Then you want to take one simple point and place it anywhere on your horizon line. For this project, we're putting it right over on the edge. You can almost say maybe like a 1/2 inch from the side is pretty okay. That works. The next thing you have is just like this, which could essentially be one of your letters. Think of it as maybe a lowercase simple I. You have a flat-facing object where you can see it head-on, straight, not from the side, not from any other angle, just a flat, simple, rectangular box, let's just say. And what you're going to do is you're going to justify it into three-dimensional space, an illusion, if you will, of three-dimensional space. And what you do is you justify each of your corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, since we are working kind of at this sort of dimension, and that our letters aren't transparent, that you don't need to see this corner. So all you're really going to be doing is, with all your letters, justifying the edges that do get seen. So in other words, let me just try to explain this a little less simply by visually showing you. I'm all about the visuals. Sometimes that's the easiest. So what you do is you line up your ruler onto your dot. And the key is you want to try to hit the dot in the same place every time. And just what I do is I usually line up my dot with the ruler first and then just pivot my ruler to try to make it hit the edge. The idea is that the closest you can get to your edge and your dot is how good a perspective you're going to have it in, and how it's going to look right and not wobbly, if you will. So carefully line these up. You pull this, it's kind of like warping it into space, like whoosh, creating a sense of movement, if you will. So here you go. And there's kind of the idea of what you want. You want these letters to now be kind of pulled into space to hit the back dot here. So every flat-facing letter that you do gets pulled to just this one dot. So you can kind of see it on the project sheet that we did. I started to erase out all these extra lines. This dot feeds all the lines that you're going to need for all your letters. Just keep in mind there's some things that you don't want to miss. Like you don't want to miss certain edges. Like you still need to pull the edge of the J all the way back to here. You want to take the inside of the A and pull that all the way back to your dot as well. So all of these things get pulled. Even, you know, part of the underside of the J, even though it's a curvature, if you put your ruler right on, let me pull this down a little bit so that you can see. If you take your ruler and you just line it up with the very edge of your J and then put it up to the mark at the top like that, it creates that nice line. So don't forget, there's some places like underneath here that you can't see. It just never goes there. There's places inside of here that you can't put there. You'll never see it. Same with the corners here. But you do see this side. You see the inside of the E. So when you sit back and look at this, you're going to identify the word that you see as very 3D. And you'll usually pick up if you're missing an area that you forgot to extend into 3 dimensions. So once you get this all pulled into this sort of dimension, what you're going to do is you're going to want to erase all these spaghetti lines, and that's why I call them spaghetti lines, because everything is just like crazy lines and spaghetti. You erase it all out, and what you're left with is just this nice box, and it will have your letters will get cut off here. So it's no longer going super far back into space. And get this, I come in a little bit, so my box was 8 inches. I'm creating on this side, I come in slightly a 1/2 inch. And what happens is this creates the actual scissor cutting. I'll take this side. by cutting off this little area, it gives you a really nice 3D effect. Same with coming up a little bit. So let me show you where I cut on here. So when the time comes, now here's another thing. You can, in theory, take the time to shade this in now, or you can shade it in after you cut it out. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. So what I do is, because this was 8 inches, extend it over to here. Again, I cut out from along the edge of the J. Now, again, keep in mind, not all your letters are going to do this. You just then, in that case, like say if you had the letter A starting your word, like A-N-N-E, say if Anne was your name, then what you want to do is you want to just move your border in so that the A does fall off the paper slightly. So think of it this way. With whatever letter you have, you want to come in like 1/4 of an inch, about that, maybe a 1/2 inch. Maybe you could do I would almost say, like I said it was a 1/2 inch, but I think it's closer to a 1/4 inch. So you can just come in, and that's wiggle room. That's your creative challenge for yourself. I kept a little bit of darkness around it up here, but I did manage to cut in on my letter. So I'm curious to see what you guys come up with when the time comes to show off your words. Again, the idea is that you just take your 8-inch box, and on the left-hand side, because everything's kind of warping from this side, it's coming from the top down and it's jutting out. So you just want to come in slightly with whatever letter it starts with, 1/4 inch, 5/8, whatever it is that you want to use, even a 1/2 inch, just come in slightly, trim this off, and then what you want to do is trim into here, trim into here. And again, I only shade down to about here. So if this was like a 1/4 or a 1/2 inch, I come up a 1/4 or 1/2 inch in the bottom as well. And again, it allows my letters to kind of fall out of the frame. So keep that in mind. All these kind of fall out. I just run a nice little line, and essentially I'm just squeezing my little back hole a little tight so that these little words jut out. Let's take a look at it as if, I'll turn this off for a nice back sheet. Take a look at it this way. So see, I came up slightly, that little bit of like a 1/2 inch. It makes my letters dangle out. And I came in slightly on the one side, on the left-hand side, the same amount. And it allows, and I don't have to cut the top, and I don't have to cut the side. You only want to cut the bottom and the left-hand side. So after you're done cutting it out very carefully, again, an X-Acto knife gives you probably a better cut. What you want to do is then shade in. Again, I said you could shade first. It's your comfort level, whatever you want to do, or you could just cut it out and then go in and start shading it in. Notice the difference in the pencils that I use. Again, I'm using, as I mentioned, a 3B pencil here that gives you a really nice dark consistency, like it's really velvety. Not super dark, although you're welcome to go super dark black if you really push. And the one thing I do want is no scribbles, and I want you to be as tight as this, where you see very little paper behind. So just take your time and shade this in as carefully as you can. And then with your 4H pencil, which you can tell is a very different feel, I just lightly gray it in, again trying to get rid of any paper that's left, and just shade it. Now if you want to play around with a little bit darker shading, like say for instance, let me pull it in this way. If you want to go over it a couple times to make it a little bit darker, like say in here, you can shade it in here. What that does, it gives an illusion of depth and shadow. Although I haven't really taught this in detail yet, it's for those of you who are very used to this, and this assignment might be a little bit boring to you. You can have a little fun with this, and again make a little bit more dramatic effects with a little bit of shading. The idea though is to not go off too far off the deep end and make it super dark. You want to keep this kind of silvery gray. The results are your letters are super white of the paper, so you might have to go back and erase your letters to keep them really crisp and white. You keep your lines in, of course. Some of you, I've noticed in the past when giving this assignment, like to darken your letters nicely. Just use a sharp pencil when you do it to get a nice straight line. Be careful when you outline it so you don't, kind of get it too dark. You want a nice consistency. And this is the results. So you'll cut this out. Again, This 8-inch block is essentially 8 inches from the edge of your letter to the edge of your paper on this side, and everything in here is, you know, nicely little cut little areas. So try to produce that, and yeah, it's due next Monday, or in some cases for you who have me on Wednesday, it'll be due Wednesday. For the course of this whole week's assignment. So there you go. Ask me if you have any questions. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.